Hey, what's up you guys? It's Dorothy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to go into chapter 31 of 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. We are just about done with this. We've got 10 more chapters and then a bonus reading at the very end. So I'm so excited to get through this book with you guys. I don't know what's gotten into me, but the last couple of books we've gone through them so fast, and I'm honestly, I'm proud of myself, but at the same time it overwhelms me with how fast we've gotten through them. But let's get right into this video. This video may contain sensitive topics and foul language. If you do not wish to continue, please click off of the video now. You guys have been warned. Chapter 31. Red blinked. Her heart was in her throat, grotesque and swelling, cutting off her airway as she watched Oliver turn to face her, his chest rising and falling. Arthur was still bent and double behind, coughing into his hands. "What did you say?" Oliver asked her again, and she could feel his eyes boring into hers. An almost physical sensation. She didn't like it, him looking at her like that. It might leave a mark. "I have the secret. It's me," she said, voice failing her. Everyone else watching her too. Red checked around the RV. There was a look of shock in Maddie's eyes. Wait, was it shock or that same strange look from before? The static fizzed in her hands and Red hugged the walkie-talkie to her chest, purring against her empty ribcage because her heart was still climbing in her ears now. She had to give it up. "Well, what is it?" Oliver spat, puppet strings pulling his head to one side, hanging askew on his neck. "You okay?" Simon spoke across him, patting Arthur on the back as he finally straightened up. "Fine," Arthur said, brushing Simon off to look at Red, a question in his eyes, and the same as everyone else's. "Well," Oliver took a step forward. "What is it?" "Red," Maddie said tentatively, tripping over the word. Red exhaled. Her heart had moved out of the top of her head now, somewhere loose in the RV, fleeing from the look on Oliver's face. "It's me," she said, framing each word carefully, choosing the right ones. "I'm the witness," she paused. "The protected witness in the Frank Gotti case." Oliver's eyes snapped open, first shock then disbelief. "No," he shook his head. "It can't be you." And how much easier would it be to agree with him? But Red couldn't. "It's me," she said, treading carefully like Raina had before, tiptoeing around the landmines in Oliver's eyes. "I'm the witness in the case." She took one more breath and began. "I was walking in the little park on the waterfront, Washington Avenue Green. This was last August, August 28th. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, not quite dark yet, but getting there. I was walking to the bus stop on Columbus Boulevard. I'd been at the Staples nearby for school supplies. Earlier, I decided to go through the park rather than walk on the road. It's nicer there." Red paused, but she didn't need to. Words were hers so many times over and over. She didn't need to think about them. They followed each other out of her mouth in their prearranged order, just like in her statements. The way she would have said it all at the pre-trial conference in 2 weeks, and at the trial she was ready. Keep her face straight and her story straight. All the details. "I was on the path going past the back of the industrial complex there. The map says it's for sheet metal workers," she said. "I didn't know that then, though. There was no one else around at the time, just me, and then." Red did need to pause here, checking the others were listening, that Oliver hadn't crept any closer while she'd been talking. "I heard 2 gunshots, one right after the other." "1, 2. It was close by, though real close, somewhere out the back of the parking lot there near the dumpsters. I didn't want to run in case they started shooting at me, so I hid in one of the bushes by the path, and I waited." Red swallowed. "Keep going," Oliver said, like she needed his permission to continue, and he was giving it. "I heard footsteps on the pavement, and I looked up and I saw him. He didn't see me, but he walked right by me. A white man in his 50s, dark curly hair, long tan coat, even though it was warm out. I later identified him from photographs. It was Frank Gotti," Red said. "Definitely him. There was no one else around after the gun went off. I left about 10 minutes later once I was sure he was gone. Tried to forget about it, but I called the police station a couple days later after I heard the body they found that evening. Joseph Menino, shot twice in the back of the head. I should have called it in earlier, but I didn't know anyone got shot until it was on the news. I heard Frank Gotti killed him, saw him leaving the scene. I'm that witness." She finished, daring a glance up at the others. Arthur was looking down, chewing his lower lip, like a small shake of the head, like he couldn't believe it. Oliver was staring right at her. Red could feel it. She tried to avoid his gaze, to not fall into that trap. Raina was watching, tears gone now, a small sympathetic stretch in her mouth, not a smile, but on the way there, Simon puffed his cheeks, blowing out a mouthful of air, not meeting Red's eyes. Why wouldn't he look at her, avoiding her gaze like she was avoiding Oliver's? Maddie was behind. Red couldn't see her, so Maddie couldn't see her either, and that was lucky. It was half the story, half the plan, but the only half they needed to know. Red couldn't say the rest, not here, right in front of them. Why did you never tell me? Maddie croaked, and now Red spun to look at her over by the table, just 5 feet between them, but it felt longer somehow, different sides of the RV. I wasn't allowed to, Maddie, Red said, shrugging one shoulder, just one. Full anonymity for my agreement to testify in court. I had to sign a lot of paperwork. It was for my own safety. They said, no one knows. That's the whole point, not even my dad. Red had turned 18 in the first week of September when this was all starting. She was an adult in the eyes of the law now. She didn't need to tell him. Not that she was sure it would have registered anyway. Nothing did anymore, hardly noticing whether she was coming or going home or not. Maybe he didn't even notice the cold inside their house in winter. Oliver cleared his throat, eyes back and forth like he was working through her story, sifting through the details. He was pre-law, didn't you know? Why were you at Staples? He asked. There's one closer to where we live. Red had prepared for any question about her testimony, including that, running through them like drills, memorizing her responses so she could make them look natural on the stand. Sometimes I go to the waterfront by the pier, she said, clearing her throat, pausing in the appropriate place, because it's close to where my mom. She breathed, and that wasn't part of the act. It still hurt to say, guilt churning in her gut beside the fear and dread, where my mom died. No one reacted, faces blank as a favor to Red, no one except Maddie or Russell as she fidgeted somewhere behind, an outward breath that almost sounded like a sigh. Maybe Red was banned from saying the word too, sorry. Oliver raised his head, another question forming on his lips. What are the chances that it was you? You're the lead witness for the prosecution, and our mom is the lead prosecutor, except it wasn't a question. Not one Red knew the answer to, at least. Oliver, Maddie said, stepping forward, voice stronger now. Don't you see? That's probably why Mom forgot she fought so hard to have this case, to make sure it wasn't tried in federal court. It was so she could protect Red, make sure her name was kept out of all the court documents, that she was completely anonymous. She would have wanted to be in charge of all of that for Red. Maddie was right. For her mom had done all of that. Red had met with Catherine Lavoie many times over the past 6 months, not as Red, as her best friend's mom, or as her dead mom's best friend, but as assistant district attorney and her lead eyewitness in the upcoming case, going over the facts in Red's testimony, practicing for trial. She was safe. Catherine would tell her. Her name would never get out, she promised, except now. It was, promise or not. Oliver nodded, seeing the sense in what Maddie had just said. Yes, he said, just to confirm it. Yes, she would have wanted that, to keep Red safe, anonymous, make sure no one ever found out who you were, except, he paused, a wayward muscle ticking in his cheek. Someone has found out who you are. They know you're the witness. That's what this is all about. He gestured his arms around the RV, rolling those 2 wide shoulders. Red followed his fingers as he traced them in the air, pointing to the bullet holes in the walls. Sorry, I heard a weird noise. Where was I? He gestured his arms around the RV, rolling those 2 wide shoulders. Red followed his fingers as he traced them in the air, pointing to the bullet holes in the walls and furniture. I said right at the start, didn't I, that this is had organized crime written all over it. This is what they do. He stood still for a moment, staring right at her through her. They are here to kill you, to make sure you can't testify at the trial. Simon gasped, maybe not at what Oliver was saying, but that he'd said it at all. But Red knew Oliver was right. The rest of them must as well. The man out there with the rifle knew who she was, and that little red dot, it meant for her, always meant for her. Oliver, Raina hissed, trying to tell him something with her eyes, but Oliver blinked and looked away from her, back at Red. Why didn't you say all this 3 hours ago when the sniper told us he knew who we were, that he was looking for a secret? His eyes darkened and Red's heart reacted like it was a direct link between them, cause and effect, kicking up her chest. You must have known he was talking about you. But she hadn't, and that was the truth. She hadn't, because she listened to Oliver once again over her own gut. No, Red said, taking one step back away from Oliver toward Maddie. I didn't think there was any way they knew I was the witness. Your mom told me no one could find out my name or any identifying factors. That was the whole point. And then you confused me. Red shook her head. You said they were holding you and Maddie hostage to get the name from your mom, and I thought you must be right, and obviously I didn't want them to get the name because they'd know it was me, so I went along with your escape plans. I was wrong, but so were you. It happened in half a breath, in one flicker of static hissing in her hands. Oliver switched, flipped, face changing around those overbearing eyes. Hard edges all teeth. You should have told us at the start, he roared, pointing 2 fingers toward her like a gun made from the flesh and bone of his hand. You know this was about you. You kept this to yourself. Kept us here hours longer than we needed to be selfish. Red, stupid, those 2 people out there. Red bet he'd already forgotten their names. They're dead, and it's your fault. Red spit flew from his mouth. You could have ended this hours ago. No, not more guilt. Red couldn't carry any more. She begged Oliver not to pass the note to Joyce and Dawn. It was him, not her. Please say it wasn't her. You didn't tell your secret back then either, Arthur said, rough and jagged. Was he angry, or was that from Oliver pressing against his throat? It could have been about you, and you held on to it, and Raina. You only spoke up when Raina forced you to. Shut the fuck up, Oliver said, not taking his eyes off Red, trapping her there in his gaze. She shouldn't have looked back. Now she was stuck, legs melding into the ground. If you die, Frank Gotti walks, Oliver said, voice lower, but the threat was still there, recharging. That's what they want. They're here to kill you. She knows that, Oliver, Simon said, staring at the back of his head. You don't have to keep saying it. Oliver blinked, and Red moved another step back, closing the gap between her and Maddie. The RV wasn't safety, but Maddie Lavoie was. Maddie looked after her, just like Catherine, paid for Red's lunch sometimes when she couldn't, though Red had never asked her to, helped her look for things when she lost them, kept reminders like a walking, talking to-do list, organized this whole trip so Red could afford to come on spring break. Maddie cared. Red, Oliver said, turning her name ugly in his mouth full of hard edges. You have to leave the RV. No one said anything for 2 seconds, only the empty fizzing static that had made its home in Red's head. What? Maddie shrieked, voice right behind her cutting through. Oliver, what are you talking about? She has to leave the RV. Oliver looked over at his sister like Red was already gone and it wasn't up for discussion. They want her. She's putting the rest of us in danger by staying here. Look, he's going to keep shooting up the RV until he gets what he wants. Some of us will get hit. Some of us will die if we continue. We need to give him what he wants. And he wants Red. No, Arthur roared, now voice dark and dangerous to match Oliver's. He stretched out his full height, raised his chin to look Oliver in the eye. Red is not leaving the RV. You can't be serious, Simon was saying. He'll kill her. Oliver didn't answer Simon, instead looking at Red like she was the one who'd spoken. Her heart was fast in her chest, too fast. It knew what was coming, and so did she. Both unraveling at their seams. She didn't want to die. She wasn't ready. And oh God, she knew it was coming, just like her mom did. Lifetimes of regret and guilt and anger and hate in those last few seconds of life. No one's world would fall apart without her, though at least that was one good thing. Would it hurt, or would it feel like relief when the bullet finally split her open? What should her final thought be? Please not about the fucking pattern and those fucking curtains. Why couldn't she let that go? She was supposed to be thinking about dying, for fuck's sake. She didn't want to die. No, this couldn't be happening. Maddie, help. You must have known, Oliver was saying, voice strange and unsteady like he was trying to control it, trying to be reasonable when reason had gone out the window hours ago. His eyes betrayed him. Though wild and unfocused, on some level you must have known this was a possibility when you agreed to testify, Red. I mean, this is the Philly mob we're talking about. What did you think was going to happen? Not this. Never this. No one was ever supposed to find out her name. Catherine told her that, but she didn't do anything wrong, Simon said, backing up to stand closer to Red. She just saw a man leaving a crime scene. She shouldn't have to die for that. His arms tensed at his sides, the Eagles logo on the back of his shirt ripping, mouth opening and closing like it was whispering silent nothings to Red. I mean, Oliver, you actually killed someone. You weren't prepared to leave, and you weren't prepared to leave the RV. That doesn't concern you, Simon, Oliver said darkly, trying even harder to mask it. Yes, it does. Simon raised his voice. It concerns every single one of us. No one is leaving this RV. That's what you said back when you thought it was your secret they wanted. I see the rules are different for you then. We're not kicking Red out. Do you want to die, Oliver? Let his eyes fall on Simon, and Simon shrank under their weight. No one wants to die, that's my point, Simon answered, trying to push back. She's not going anywhere, Arthur said, flanking Oliver from the other side, glasses flashing under the lights. Oliver ignored them both, turning back to Red. Red, listen to me, he said, softening his voice, but it wasn't soft at all. It was stiff, barbs and thorns at the end of his words. You need to accept what's happening here. There's nothing the rest of us can do. You know You know it, don't you? You know you have to leave the RV to save the rest of us, to protect Maddie. She's your best friend, isn't she? You've known each other all your lives. Save her." His chin moved up and down with those final 2 words, drilling them home. "Oliver, no," Maddie cried. "Stop it. Please just stop." "You're all thinking it, too." Oliver cast his eyes at all of them, skipping over Red because she didn't matter anymore. There was still 2 sides to the RV, but this time it was Red against everyone else. A team of 1. Don't pretend none of us want to die. "None of us want to throw Red out," Arthur said in his answer, and he must have learned it from Oliver, sharpening his words to a point. Oliver even winced, took 1 step away. "I know you're all protesting because you have to in front of Red," he said, "because you care about her." His eyes spun another circuit of the RV. "That's why we're going to put it to a vote, a blind ballot, so you can vote whichever way you want, and no one else will ever know." The air had grown thorns now, too, infected by Oliver's words, pricking at Red's skin, stabbing at the surface of her eyes. It wasn't warm now, it was hot, sweat pulling along the line of her lip, but there was a chill at the back of her neck, hairs rising. She didn't want to die. She didn't want to die. "A vote?" Rena asked, shattering the silence, eyebrows pulling together across her forehead. The static hissed, reacting, and Red's cupped hands. Oliver nodded. "Just once, that was enough. A vote on whether Red stays or she goes." That is the end of chapter 31. I will see you guys in the next video.